Today in the shop, we're going to get started on our ZL1. What's up guys? We're finally back in the shop, and today we're going to get started on our ZL1. And there's a few things that are not really the way I would do them on this car, so we're going to tear everything down so we can fix them. This car is a Meth kit that we won't be using anymore, so the first step is to get it removed to make way for the new upgrades. Let's get started. If you guys watched the intro video when I picked up this car, it was built by a shop before I purchased it, and I just didn't like the build quality of the parts they used on the car, especially this Meth kit. Not only is it not necessary, nor is it effective, but they did a very sloppy job on the install, and my OCD just won't let that slide, so it's got to go. Now the tank, pump, and some of the wiring are in the trunk, so I'm just getting all the trim pieces out of the way so I have access to easily remove everything. These pieces come out very easily with the panel removal tool. There are only 2 pins each, and they come right out, which as you can see here, I didn't quite figure out on the first one, but the second one went much easier. You might notice I also switched panel tools. You can use either style, but these little plastic ones I think make it easier. Then just work the panel around any wiring and rotate it 90 degrees, it will slide right out. Since we're working with electronics, it's good practice to always remove the negative battery cable to prevent damage to anything. I also needed to get access to the positive terminal to remove some of the wiring. As you saw, that cover was broken when the shop removed it previously. I actually saw things like this just about anywhere they touch the car, and I know this is something small in this case, but this is not what you expect from a supposed high-end shop. The power and ground leads were easy to remove. There's also an activation wire in the fuse block that has to be removed, and as you can see, the wiring is just tangled around this fuse box pretty good, but I managed to get it all removed. I found that using the other end of the panel removal tool makes it easier to remove the clips for electrical connectors than trying to get it with your thumb. And this wiring ties into the relay that powers the Meth pump and the controller, and we'll get to the controller later. That's a whole nother mess. And with the wiring out of the way, the tank can be removed with a couple bolts. Then we can disconnect the line. Dismount the pump. Remove the wiring and get that out of the way as well. That takes care of everything that comes out of the trunk. Now we can move on to the electrical in the interior of the car. The wiring for this system runs up the side of the trunk, under the back seat, down the driver's side rocker panel, and up the side of the dash. Now I've already removed the back seat as well as the rocker and dash trim pieces so I can get everything out of here, starting with the controller and then the LEDs, and I'm still upset they drilled the dash for those. I didn't get it on video, but I did end up replacing the entire dash because of that. Why they couldn't put them in the vent right above this, I have no idea. Anyhow, I was finally able to remove all the wiring so we can come out of here, and well, let's just say it's a bird's nest. One of the main reasons this Meth system was effectively useless, you can see right here. They installed a single nozzle into the elbow of the intake. This works great on a turbo or a ProCharger car, but on a positive displacement blower, it does absolutely nothing. Now I could see it being used maybe to cool the intake charge, but it would have been much better to be plumbed directly into the lid. So in order to get everything removed, I decided to go ahead and remove the rotofab since I'm going to replace that in a later video anyhow. There are 3 nuts that hold the filter shroud on and just some hose clamps that hold the elbow and silicone coupler on. This line was kind of annoying to move because instead of rotating in the fitting like it's supposed to, it wanted to coil up on me. So I just removed the intake elbow and did it that way, then removed the nozzle off camera. With everything disconnected now, I can finally start to remove the Meth line. First starting at the back of the car, where the line routes from the trunk, past the exhaust and around the wheel tub. Once that's free, I can move up front to remove the inline filter, which was installed with self-tappers. Such build quality here. And the rest of the line from the engine bay. Then finally the remainder of the line, which they ran inside the side skirts. I also connected the line to itself to prevent any leakage. This car already has headers, an upper pulley, and the cold air. However, the blower is still suffocating. Not only is the cold air too small, but the throttle body is as well. As a general rule, we need about 1.5 CFM per flywheel horsepower. And since we're gonna be in the 850, 900 flywheel horsepower range, that means we need a throttle body and cold air that can flow around 1300 CFM. Now I'll touch on that more in a future video, but to use a larger throttle body, we first have to open the blower up. So our next step is to remove the blower and ship it out to have the snout ported. Before the supercharger comes off, I decided to remove the coil covers. This is not a necessary step to remove these to gain access to remove the supercharger, but it does help a little in getting to the wiring harness for the coil packs. And since I'm here, I plan to dress up the engine bay a little bit. So these are going to get sent out. They're going to be smoothed and hydro dipped and clear coated before they get reinstalled. It seems like there are a million things in the way of getting to the supercharger, and there are, but 99% of them are wiring and hoses. This harness comes across from the passenger side, so I started by disconnecting anything and everything on the driver's side. Coil packs, throttle body, evap solenoid, etc., etc. With all this disconnected, you can remove the harness out of the way to gain access to the bolts for the blower lid, which we're going to need in the next step. Now, some of these connectors can be difficult, but just take your time, use the panel tool to depress the clips, and they will pop out. Then you can just route everything out of the way until the harness is free. Also, while we're here, there are two hoses for the supercharger cooling system that need to be removed. I've always had a ton of success using channel locks on these GM hose clamps, but there is a special tool for it if you want to grab one. We also have to remove all the plastic hoses for the evap and PCV system, since this car does have a catch can. More on that disaster in another video as well. And with everything out of the way, the harness should finally be free and we're ready to pull the blower. The first thing I want to take off the supercharger is the throttle body. Now I feel like so many people that should be upgrading their throttle body don't, and so many people that shouldn't be upgrading their throttle body are. So I plan to do a tech tip video to elaborate on this, but this car definitely does need a throttle body, so this one won't be going back on the car. Instead, we have a 100mm Solar Performance throttle body ready to go on, which, as you know, is why we have to remove this supercharger in the first place. Don't forget to remove the belt before you remove the supercharger bolts. That's a great way to strip the threads and damage a head. Finally, the part we've been waiting for. To remove the supercharger, you first have to remove the supercharger lid. It has 14-inch bolts around the perimeter, as well as 4 in the center that all need to be removed. I just broke them loose first with hand tools and then buzzed them out with my cordless just for the sake of time. This part goes very quick, mostly due to all the prep work we did previously to ensure we have easy access to all the bolts. A couple of those bolts in the front and back have wire harness clips on them that I removed off camera, but they just pop right off with a panel tool. Once all the bolts are removed, the lid just lifts right off. There's no port work to be done on this lid, but I do have a different project coming for it in a future video. With the lid out of the way, we can now remove the blower. I'm doing the same process here, breaking these bolts loose with hand tools, then backing them out with the cordless to make quick work of them. These bolts can come all the way out at this stage, except for the very back bolts, which will hit the cowl. You'll have to get those out later. These bolts are torqued to yield, so when you remove them, throw them in the trash. I tried to reuse one like a dumbass, broke one of them in half, and it almost turned into a real bad day for me. So do yourself a favor, replace these guys. Once all the bolts are removed and the blower is free from the PCV port on the valley cover, you can slide it forward a little bit, but don't forget to disconnect the sensors on the back of the blower before you pick it up and remove it entirely. This one can now be packed up and shipped out for porting. Just because the supercharger is off the car does not mean this job is done. Take a roll of painter's tape and put it over the intake ports on the heads. Trust me, it is very easy for a piece of debris to fall into the head, And the last thing you want to do is to pull the head after you get everything reassembled. A roll of painter's tape is like $2, so this is just cheap insurance. It won't damage the head or anything when you go to remove it. I tore the pieces off long and just trimmed off the excess, but that's entirely up to you. So now that we have everything torn down, I'm sure you're probably asking, what exactly are the plans for this car? Our goal is to push this car as far as we safely can on mostly OEM components, fuel system, stock bottom end, factory blower, so that we can race it reliably later this year. And this is going to require optimizing the parts we have to ensure we have enough air and fuel to reach our goals. If you have questions or comments, please drop them below. And as always, don't forget to smash that thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to grab your Reckless merch from our website, recklessreal.com. And if you want to see what we're working on before it's posted on YouTube, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. That's it for this one, guys. I'll see you on the next video.